Priest finds baby at church with Bible verse on chest. He's shocked when he reads it. Father Thomas McKay unlocked the heavy oak doors of St. Agnes just after sunrise. The air was crisp, still damp from the night's rain, and the silence inside the sanctuary felt deeper than usual. He flipped on the hallway lights, his steps echoing down the tiled corridor. Sunday mornings were always slow before the choir arrived. He expected peace. Instead, he got something else. In the second pew, wrapped in a faded floral blanket, lay a baby. Alone. He froze. The child stirred slightly, then let out a soft cry. A note, taped gently to her tiny chest, fluttered with the movement. His heartbeat surged in his ears as he stepped closer, slowly, like approaching something sacred or dangerous. He couldn't decide which. The baby had a full head of dark hair and cheeks flushed from the chill. But it was the note that held his gaze. His fingers trembled as he peeled it free. It wasn't a name. It wasn't an explanation. It was a single line, written in block letters. Isaiah 49:15. Thomas's mouth went dry. The verse jolted something in his memory. He had seen that before. But where? He looked down at the baby again, whose eyes were now open, dark, alert, and watching him. He wrapped her in his arms and moved toward the rectory, dialing emergency services with shaking hands. The dispatcher asked questions he couldn't fully answer. How old? A few days, maybe? Any injuries? None he could see. He gave his name. His voice cracked when he tried to say what he'd found. The police arrived quickly, along with a paramedic team. Flashing lights painted the old church walls red and blue. Thomas watched from the side as they examined the child. The officers asked if there was security footage. He told them the church only had one working camera, and it faced the main entrance. He stayed silent about the verse. He didn't know why. The baby was carried out gently, placed in the arms of a young officer who whispered something kind before stepping into the cruiser. As the car pulled away, Thomas remained on the stone steps, watching the taillights disappear. Inside the church, sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting color across the empty pews. He returned to the spot where she had been left, lowering himself slowly onto the wooden bench. He stared down at the crumpled paper still in his hand. That verse. It wouldn't let go of him. Not because of what it said, but because of where he'd seen it before, and who it was connected to. The police returned that afternoon. 2 detectives, one older and quiet, the other young and sharp-eyed, sat across from Father Thomas in the rectory office. A cup of untouched coffee sat between them. The younger one asked most of the questions, direct, efficient. When did you find the baby? Did you touch anything besides the note? Have you seen anyone unusual near the church? Thomas answered calmly, but his hands wouldn't stop fidgeting with the corner of his sleeve. They asked to see the camera footage. He led them to the old desktop computer in the sacristy. The video feed from the front steps showed hours of stillness, until just after 4 a.m. A shadow moved into frame. Small, hunched, a figure in a hooded coat. No clear face. They walked slowly, almost limping, and disappeared inside. 2 minutes later they emerged, empty-handed. No vehicle, no license plate, just a shape that came and left like a ghost. Back in the rectory, Thomas asked the officers if the baby would be okay. The older detective nodded. Healthy, no signs of harm. She's safe, Father. But the younger one leaned forward. You said the Bible verse looked familiar? Thomas hesitated, then reached for a worn newspaper clipping in his desk drawer. It was 6 months old. The headline read, "Teen girl disappears without a trace. Family fears the worst." The photo showed a young woman, Mia Reynolds, age 17. Thomas laid the paper on the table and pointed at a detail most missed. She left a note when she vanished, he said. It had one thing on it, Isaiah 49:15. The room went still. The younger detective raised an eyebrow. The older one looked down at the paper, then back up at Thomas. You knew her? She came here once, maybe twice. Confession, nothing official. She was scared. I didn't know why at the time. Outside, the sky had turned gray. The stained glass cast long shadows through the hallways. Thomas felt the pressure of something bigger building. Too many things left unsaid. Something about that girl, that verse, this baby. It wasn't coincidence. The next morning, someone left a candle burning in the sanctuary. No one claimed it. Tied around its base was a silk ribbon, soft blue. Knotted inside was a slip of paper with 5 words. "She's safe now. Thank you." Thomas stood alone in the chapel, the words echoing in his mind like a whisper from someone just out of reach. He didn't know who had left it, but he knew one thing for certain. Whoever they were, they trusted him. Father Thomas drove to the edge of town in silence, the old parish car rattling slightly with every turn. Mia Reynolds's childhood home sat at the end of a gravel road, its porch sagging with time, blinds drawn tight. The yard was overgrown, quiet, forgotten, just like the girl who once lived there. He knocked gently. No answer. He knocked again. The door creaked open a few inches, and a tired woman stared back at him. Her face was pale, sunken. She looked like someone who had lost too much sleep and far too much hope. Thomas removed his hat and spoke softly. "I'm Father McKay. I believe you're Mia's mother." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes moved to the collar on his shirt, then to the envelope in his hand. When he held out the photograph of the baby, her breath caught in her throat. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She did it. She really did it." Thomas stepped inside, the air thick with dust and stale air. Faded pictures lined the mantel, Mia in pigtails, Mia in a graduation cap, Mia smiling with braces. Her mother sat down slowly, hands shaking. She hadn't cried in months, but the tears came now, fast and sudden. "She told me if she ever went missing, I shouldn't believe the police. She said if something happened, it meant someone was watching her." Thomas listened. Every word added another layer to a story that already felt too heavy. Mia's mother opened a drawer and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. It was worn at the edges, the lock snapped off. A diary. She placed it gently in Thomas's hands. "I found it after she disappeared," she said. "Didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know who to trust." The pages inside were filled with panic. Scribbled entries described strange cars parked outside the house, a man who followed her home from the corner store, a job offer that felt wrong but paid too much to ignore. Then came entries about being trapped, watched, not allowed to call home, and finally, about being pregnant. One line stopped Thomas cold. "If I can't make it out, I'll make sure she does. He'll know the verse, he'll remember." He closed the book slowly, the weight of it like stone in his hands. Everything inside him told him what he already feared. Mia wasn't just missing, she was running for her life. The call came just after midnight. The church line, rarely used, rang once, then twice. Father Thomas answered, expecting a wrong number or another sleepless parishioner. Instead, a voice. Female, young, breathless, spoke only one sentence. "She's mine. I had to leave her." The line went dead. He stood in the dark rectory hallway, the dial tone humming in his ear like static. There was no caller ID, no number to call back, just the weight of the words, still hanging in the air like incense. The next morning, he showed the message to the detectives. They listened, serious, quiet. One of them leaned back in his chair and said, "She's alive. That means this whole thing just changed." A police tech pulled footage from a camera Thomas had forgotten about. An old unit mounted by the side door of the church, rarely used. The image was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. At 4:03 a.m., a hooded figure appeared again. This time closer. Female. Small. She moved slowly, favoring one leg. In her arms, the baby. She stepped into the church, stayed just under 3 minutes, then slipped back into the night. Detectives expanded the search, but no one could find her. No bus tickets purchased, no hospital records, no shelter sign-ins. It was like she'd vanished again. Thomas stood in front of the altar that evening, the diary still in his hands. He turned to the last page, where Mia had scribbled her final entry in thick, urgent pen strokes. "They will come for her if I don't disappear. But he'll remember the verse. I know he will." The police, now more convinced than ever, looked into Mia's last known whereabouts. An abandoned warehouse outside the city, once listed as a modeling agency, had burned down 3 months ago. A sweep of the area turned up no bodies, but the back wall had a cot, baby formula, a backpack with Mia's initials burned into the leather. The case was reclassified. Not a runaway, not a suicide, not a tragedy. It was a survival story. One officer returned with hospital reports under an alias, all filed at a women's clinic just weeks before the baby was found. The woman used no ID, but the doctor remembered her. "She didn't say much," the doctor had said. "But I remember her eyes. She wasn't broken. She was determined." Thomas sat in the church pew that night, the stained glass throwing broken light onto the stone floor. In his lap, the baby cooed softly, her hand wrapped around his finger. He didn't know where Mia was, but he knew this much. She was alive, and she had done what no one thought possible. The morning sun pushed through the stained glass windows, casting ribbons of light across the wooden pews. Father Thomas knelt at the altar, the baby bundled in a soft white blanket beside him. The chapel was empty, but it didn't feel that way. It felt watched, held, like something sacred had passed through and never fully left. The police hadn't found Mia. Not yet. But the air had shifted. The case was no longer a tragedy. It was a trail. One built on courage, pain, and faith. They had confirmed the baby's identity through DNA. Mia's daughter. There was no doubt now. Thomas looked down at the folded paper he still kept tucked in his Bible. Isaiah 49:15. He whispered the words aloud, slowly. "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you." The door creaked open behind him. He didn't turn. He thought maybe it was a parishioner, maybe another curious visitor. But something in the silence that followed made him glance back. A woman had stepped inside, thin frame, hood pulled over her head. She didn't speak. She didn't move closer, just stood in the aisle, watching. Thomas stood. The baby stirred slightly in his arms. The woman's hand lifted, not high, not dramatic, just a slow, soft gesture. Then she turned and slipped back through the doors before anyone else could notice. He walked to the back of the chapel. Nothing but a faint scent of lavender lingered in the air. No footprints, no sound. But on the back pew, carefully placed where the woman had stood, was a folded cloth. Inside it, a note. "Tell her I loved her enough to let her go." He pressed the cloth to his chest. His eyes burned. Then he looked down at the baby, who had opened her eyes again. Dark, quiet, searching. Later that week, the child was placed into temporary care with Mia's mother. A full investigation was still underway, but there was no question anymore. This wasn't abandonment. It was escape. It was sacrifice. Thomas stood before the congregation that Sunday, holding the verse one last time. He didn't preach a sermon. He just read the words that had tied everything together. And when he looked out at the pews, he saw something he hadn't seen in months. Hope. A baby had been left in a church, but it wasn't a loss. It was a miracle.